Hi, I'm breaking the fourth wall right away. My name is Stellan, as most of you know, and today I'm going to be talking to you. Yes, you. Fourth wall break. Doing it. Now, this can be quite a boring topic, and it can be kind of basic. So what I decided to do is not give you a talking head video or a slideshow. I'm going to do this differently. This is going to be far from a normal informational video. I'm going to be interacting with you, maybe asking you some couple questions for you to mull over and think about. And if time comes, maybe you can ask them to me face to face. Getting into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about the straw man fallacy. And this topic can be kind of cumbersome. There are so many intricate ways that it can affect our reading, our interpretation of sources, as well as the way that we discuss and the way that we actually debate one another or argument with someone else. I'm not going to give you all of that. I'm going to give you the cliff notes and what I found to be most important to take away from this topic. The three main things that I found are how it's used, when it's used, who uses it, and how to counter it. That is one of my most important things, is how to understand when someone is using it and how to basically take it back from them and how to continue with your conversation in a more positive way. So, let's start off and take this exactly where this needs to go, and let's take care of that. Yeah. This is where we are right now. Logic goes completely out the window with the straw man fallacy. For instance, it takes the topic that you're trying to go for and simplifies it in a way that completely degrades all the intricacies of your topic that you're talking about, which then makes your opponent easier to dismantle certain things. Like, for instance, son, your curfew is 10 p.m. tonight. But the party doesn't even start till 9. It's a school night. You have to be home by 10. So unfair. You just want me to be unpopular. It takes the parent's logic and discounts it for an emotional response. The child is looking to further their gain by maybe a later curfew. They want to continue the emotional game to gain an advantage over their parent and to change the subject. This leads into the usage of when and who uses the straw man effect. The straw man effect is everywhere in our daily lives. It can be just a minor nitpicking of your opinion to sway you one way or the other. There's so many different ways that the straw man effect affects our daily lives. And politicians are part of our daily lives at some points. And politicians love the straw man effect. And you know, in doing research for this project, they have not made it hard to find instances like our most recent former president has said this. Our former president, as I'm reading it right here, has said, "When are we going to beat Mexico at the border?" My biggest question is, when were we in competition? He uses this to oversimplify the conversation of immigration, and it's kind of degrading to look at such a simplistic thing as a conflict rather than a notion of a changing idea in our country. And our current president is no stranger to saying similar things like this. Remember, in the Constitution, the Second Amendment was never absolute. You couldn't buy a cannon with the Second Amendment was passed. You couldn't go out and purchase lots of weapons. See, he uses the idea of the Constitution that it's not a solid definition, though he tends to follow every other definition of the Constitution. So he's kind of nitpicking at certain little aspects to simplify the topic. If you can take anything away from what I'm trying to get at, it's simplify to pull apart. And both of them... enough of me trying to appease both parties. Both politicians and people alike, whenever they're in an argument, like to use this for one very solid reason that is almost guaranteed every time to be used: they're losing. People hate losing. Like we've talked about many times in class before, we have our own ego that just doesn't want us to lose. And the straw man effect is one of the most common uses when we are losing. We like to nitpick and pull apart certain things to try and find a way to slither our way back into the argument. But I think it's important to learn one very specific thing: how to counter that. When we run into it, what can we do to pull away from it? If we use it, how can we reestablish ourselves as being credible? Now, this is coming from some personal experience and some more logical explanations of how to get out of these things or how to turn things around on your user. Number one, how to get out of it, or how to not use a straw man effect. Don't change the subject. If you're debating on something and you don't necessarily have the information, restate your information. Don't try to change the subject. Now, changing the subject to bolster your point a little bit is understandable. It actually helps immensely to prove that your point is vast and has a much larger implication. But the more and more you change it farther from the original point, the more it lessens in its credibility. Now, number two, one that I have found actually really helps. If someone is using the straw man effect against you, call them out on it. A lot of times, there's two things that can happen. Either one, they didn't realize that they were changing the subject that far, and the conversation wasn't meant to go that far, and they're willing to go back and talk about the original conversation, or you kind of prove to other people that their logic and their reasoning doesn't have sound evidence. And it can either end the conversation right there or have them backtrack, which is a good... So now it's time for some closing remarks. I hope that I've been able to explain the straw man effect or the straw man fallacy throughout my presentation. I have actually really enjoyed looking into this topic. There are so many different facets of it that have such a large impact on our life, and we don't realize how much we nitpick at certain things and how much it degrades the conversation, and how much the less we use the straw man fallacy inside of our lives and other people don't use it, how much we can improve the progress of conversations. They don't slow so much. So thank you for listening to me ramble for a good 5-10 minutes. This has been wonderful making this video. Thank you.